Hello and welcome back to the Hazzabhajan YouTube channel. It is Harry here, and today it is time to continue on with the Nation Roulette series that I run on my channel, where I look at football in a myriad of countries that scatter the globe on which we live, and today it is the turn of Angola. This is the 16th episode of this series thus far, and if you want to check out the episodes that I have done, there is a playlist link that is in the description. I've done the likes of Colombia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the Central African Republic, Gibraltar, Finland. I've done all kinds of countries, so if you want to check any of them out, or preferably all of them, as I say, the playlist link is in the description for you to check it more out. And whilst you're there, of course, please hit the like button if you enjoy the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. But for now, let's investigate the footballing scene in the Portuguese-speaking sub-Saharan nation of Angola. Angola is the 7th largest country in Africa and the 2nd largest Lusophone country behind Brazil in the entire world, covering over 1 million square kilometers of land and with a population of just over 31 million, bordering countries such as Namibia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and Zambia. The Portuguese established its first colony in the region in the 1570s, and even though it had relinquished full control of the region by the end of the 17th century, it still actively engaged in the Angolan slave trade, and given Angola's coastal location, it was easy for ships to dock there and exchange money for slaves. Although the trade was outlawed in 1836 by Portugal, it took until 1875 for slavery as a whole to be completely banned amongst Portuguese-speaking countries, by which point a slow colonisation process was already underway. Angola fell in 1910, and it took until 1975 for them to gain independence after much infighting which would continue over the next couple of decades, but it meant that, with the Portuguese rule gone, sport could start to develop in the country without having their best players lured away to Portuguese clubs. Although basketball has proved to be a popular sport in Angola, football still reigns supreme above all others in terms of the overall popularity and fervour for a particular sport in the country. 4 years after their independence was signed off, it finally gained its own independent FA, and by 1980 it had affiliated with both FIFA and CAF. Their first ever match, however, had come back in 1976 against the Congo, although they wouldn't make the ideal start to the autonomous sporting days, as they lost 3-2. It took a little while for them to really garner some momentum on the international front and make concerted efforts to qualify for major tournaments, as they spent the 1980s clearly finding their feet, since they were unable to qualify for any major competition. They were also hindered by the civil war that commenced almost as soon as independence from Portuguese colonial rule had been agreed upon in 1975, with 3 separate anti-colonialist factions, all backed by various superpowers, all attempting to seize control of the nation. One of them, the FNLA, dropped out of the fighting during the 1980s, but the other two, the UNITA and the MPLA, wouldn't back down until 2002, when the leader of the UNITA, Joseph Savimbi, was killed by government forces, and the UNITA subsequently engaged in peace talks with the government, which were successfully concluded in April 2002. The country had been destroyed, with its infrastructure in ruins, various outbreaks of cholera and the Marburg virus infecting the population en masse, and roads and football fields being booby-trapped with landmines and other devices, meaning the teams were unable to travel by road to away games. In spite of all of these challenges that they had to face, they finally made their first African Cup of Nations tournament in 1996 and backed it up with another qualification for the 1998 edition, although across their 6 group games they only garnered 3 points and were knocked out in the groups in both tournaments. Their dream of making the World Cup was getting ever closer though, as although they missed out on the 1998 and 2002 World Cups, they only lost once across both qualification campaigns, with players like Flavio, João Ricardo and Aqua coming through to make a real impression on the nation. It was with the appointment of Luis Oliveira Gonçalves in 2003, a man who was nicknamed the Professor in his homeland owing to his meticulous studying of the game, that gave them the impetus that they needed to make that next step. He made them well-drilled, well-organised and defensively astute, and it paid off, as in 2005, not only did they make it to the African Cup of Nations for the first time since 1998, but they also finally achieved their ultimate goal of qualifying for the World Cup. They managed to top their group ahead of African powerhouses Nigeria by virtue of their superior head-to-head record, as despite Nigeria having a much better goal difference than Angola and scoring 21 goals compared to Angola's 12 in their 10 group games, Angola's 1-0 win at home and 1-1 draw away from home against the Super Eagles meant that they progressed instead. Gonçalves stuck to his mantra of keeping it extremely tight to the back whilst hoping to spring teams on the counter-attack with their quick wingers, and they made a good account of themselves in their first game, only losing 1-0 to former colonisers Portugal. Their next game saw them shut out Mexico and hold them to a 0-0 draw, with Joao Ricardo putting in a stunning performance in goal, which meant that they stood a decent chance of making it into the round of 16, provided that they could beat Iran and Portugal beat Mexico. Portugal fulfilled their side of the bargain by winning 2-1, and it looked as though Angola could pit Mexico at the last minute as Flavio leapt to head in a Zekalanga cross to put the underdogs ahead against Iran, but the already eliminated Asian nation equalised through Sarab Bakhtiarizadeh and dashed all Angolan hopes of progressing, but they'd done the nation proud. They weren't able to make it to any of the next 3 World Cups, even being eliminated in the first round for 2018 qualifying, which means that their 2006 appearance in Germany is their only one to date. However, they did keep the momentum going from that qualification to an extent, as they managed to make it to consecutive African Cup of Nations quarter-finals in 2008 and 2010, the latter being as the host nation, but since 2013 they've only made it to the finals once, which was in 2019 when they drew twice and lost once to leave in the group stages once again. They've won 3 separate COSAFA Cups, a tournament organised for each of the nations in Southern Africa, with their successes coming in 1999, 2001 and 2004, but those are the only honours that they can proudly display in their trophy cabinet. Another seminal moment in the country's footballing history was being given the opportunity to host the African Cup of Nations in 2010, with around $1 billion being invested in training facilities and new stadia alone, although immediately after the tournament they went into disuse and disrepair, which begs the question of the extreme disparity between poverty and stadia and which one may have been more heavily prioritised by the government. Furthermore, it was marred by an attack by Angolan gunmen on the Togo team bus, which led to 3 fatalities, namely the driver of the bus in question, Togo's press officer, and their assistant manager. Togo was somehow disqualified for failing to turn up for their opening game against Ghana and were banned from taking part in the next 2 African Cup of Nations tournaments, but the Court of Arbitration for Sport finally gave a bit of sense to the proceedings and reversed CAF's decision. Money coming into the game in Angola has dried up somewhat, which may explain as to why they haven't been able to kick on since 2010, with barely any money coming into either grassroots football or youth development, so it may be a while yet before we see Angola at a World Cup again. Having said that, their amputee team did reach the final of the Amputee World Cup back in 2014, although they would lose to Russia in the showpiece event. Bizarrely enough, their record win and their record defeats were both by 6 goals, as they hit Swaziland for 7 whilst only conceding 1 back in 2000, but in 1989 their old colonist Portugal would dish out a 6-0 trouncing of their own. Their FIFA World Rankings history has been a little bit less consistent than that, with their highest position to date being 45th in July 2000 and their lowest ebb coming in March 2017 when they hit 147. But ever since then, they have risen a little bit back up the standings and find themselves in 126th as of the time of this recording. Their record goal scorer is Aqua with 39, who played in all 3 of their games at the 2006 World Cup but retired from international football straight after the tournament, and the aforementioned Flavio, who got Angola's only goal in their World Cup history, has made more appearances for the giant sable antelopes, what a fantastic nickname that is by the way, in their entire history with 91. Despite an independent FA not being formed, as mentioned, until 1979, there was a league under the Portuguese aegis from as early as 1941, known as the Campeonato Provincial de Angola, with most of the clubs being based in the capital city of Luanda. The most successful club was Sporting Club de Luanda, who won 8 league titles, although their last came in 1963, 16 years before the Jeddah, the post-independence league, was created, and ever since then they have slipped into the doldrums of lower league Angolan football. It has been left to Petro de Luanda and Primero de Agosto to pick up the mantle, as they have won 28 of the 41 completed seasons of the Girabola since 1979 between them, with Petro winning 15 and Primero picking up 13 league titles. Like a few leagues across the world, the Girabola was null and voided last season owing to the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, although it has returned in earnest this season, with Primero currently leading the way by 2 points ahead of Sagrada Esperança. The top 2 qualify each season for the African Champions League and the bottom 3 are relegated, making it a nice and simple league for me to analyse and of nice and simple points upon which to end this video. So that just about wraps up today's video on a profile of the footballing scene in Angola. If you did enjoy it, of course, as I said at the start, you can hit the like button to show your support and subscribe if you have not done so already. And you can check out all the other Nation Roulette episodes that I have done previously. As I said, there's been 15 and this one is the 16th, with the playlist link that is down in the description and will probably be on the top line behind the description of the video itself. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you then.